Yes, Lord, help me with my unbelief.
All right, here we go.
Hey, I like the track. I like the way Unbelief came out too.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, it's funny. I'll start off by telling you that when you first, and it's funny, we've never met obviously in person. We were introduced by our mutual friend Mark Hauser, who's a co-writer on Unbelief. And when I first sent it to my buddy, who's Ron Haney, who's engineering and helped me with the project, I said, "Hey, check this out. This is after I had your performance in." And his response to me was like, "Wow." He goes, that guy sounds like he's lived this song. You know what I mean? And I thought, like, well, that's why we called him, because it seemed to, I don't know about you, but for me, I had the line in the gospel where the father says, he brings his son to Jesus to be healed, and Jesus says, "If you believe," and he says, "I do believe, help my unbelief." I'm honestly, maybe you'd heard it. I had never, until I started doing this project, had heard that line, but it just jumped out. I mean, the page just jumped out at me like it was a jewel or something I'd found. Were you familiar with that line before this? I'm curious if you had seen it and sort of what you thought of that passage.
Well, man, I think that he was just. It's like I think that he was a believer, but he was just wanting more belief. It was. He just wanted to make sure that he was believing enough, and
right.
Thought that he could be doing more than he was doing. Man.
Right.
I think well, first of all, they're coming down from the Mount of Transfiguration. So Peter, James, and John have been up there, and Jesus, Moses, and Elijah appeared. Jesus just shone brightly, all around. I think that stunned the guys, and God, from the cloud said, "This is my son," and I think it was just made for Peter, James, and John to solidify maybe their belief. I think Jesus wanted to just double down on them, like, hey, this is real. And when Moses came down, he was shining, and I think that people were kind of, I don't know if they were scared when they saw Moses glowing like that, but I think maybe when Jesus came down, he was still shining when he got down to that group of people. I think the scribes and the disciples were arguing. I think the scribes were trying to, I'm not pull a fast one, but was just trying to, I don't know, show that the disciples didn't know what they were talking about, maybe,
right. Right.
And I'm thinking the people, they all rushed over to Jesus. I'm thinking I think he was probably, in my mind, in my imagination, I'm wanting to think that Jesus was probably still glowing, and it knocked them all out. It's like, wow, But I think the whole message of the thing is, you can do anything if your belief is strong enough. The man, his kid's been falling out all his life, and it's probably epilepsy or something, and
right.
I think the evil spirit, the devil, can get in you and do strange things. I've had it happen to me. I mean, personally, I've had experience with evil spirits, and I mean, just as real as can be. So I know that can happen. It's happened to me, and it was like I think Father said, if thou canst. It was like, well, hey, Jesus says, yeah, of course I can,
Right.
but you gotta believe, and we can make it happen. I think the message is just you just got to believe, and everybody struggles with unbelief at times. Um, but it's there. You just got to dip into it, man. You got to remind yourself of it. And I think that I was thinking earlier, man, when I quit drinking, I think that God's grace manifests itself from time to time, just to remind you that it's real. And I think you get a glimpse into that grace uh, every now and then, that God will just do something to you that you go, oh, okay, well,
Right.
I need,
Oh, that's
I
right.
need,
Right.
I need to, it's there, it's real. I just need to tap into it. I think sometimes you forget that you can tap into something like that. And I think the whole lesson, to me anyway, of that whole scene and everything, I think maybe the disciples, they were arguing with the scribes, and I think they were supposed to be praying and fasting and all that, and they might have been letting that slide a little bit. And the scribes were like, hey, well, why can't you exorcise this devil out of this kid? I thought y'all were supposed to be so great and all this, and I just think that they might have been slacking off a little bit. And I think Jesus was like, hey, man, I think he was telling them, hey, man, how many times do I got to tell you this? When you going to
Right.
get through your thick skull that this is, that you got to tap into this stuff. You just can't be playing around with it. If you want to make something happen, you got to just tap into it and let it rip.
It's funny. The theme of believing comes up a lot throughout this entire album. It's funny. There's a song called Believe, and there's one called Unbelief, which in essence is two sides of the same coin. But part of that, and kind of how we approached this song, was, you can believe, and yet you can still be living your life in a certain way and struggling, with, as we say in the song, struggling with demons and things like that. But at the same time, you do believe, right? Like, and that's to your point, is that sometimes you need like kind of a wake up call to remind you. It's like, it's almost reminding you of something you already know, but our tendency for some reason is to kind of forget that. It starts to, everything starts to blur a little bit. You need to get focused. But you were mentioning about, when you were drinking. So my understanding was you still, even during that time, have you been a believer your entire life? I mean, is it like since you were a child, had you ever
Yeah,
felt?
man.
Yeah.
Hey, there's never been a day in my life. Well, since I was old enough to know what was going on, pardon me, there's never been a day in my life I hadn't been a believer in Jesus Christ. I don't know if I ever missed a day of saying my prayers that I can remember. Even in my drunk days, I was still saying my prayers. I had
Right.
sense enough to know that. I mean, I might have been drunk, but I had sense enough to know that God was real and Jesus was real, and was nothing going to change that. It was my whole deal. It wasn't God's fault or Jesus' fault, And I was saying, every now and then you get reminded, man, my whole deal of redemption, I think, from my deliverance from alcohol and drug abuse and all that, I would get on the horse and ride a while and fall off, and get on the horse and ride a while and fall off. I just never could stay sober. And I mean, I, I thought I was trying, but one day I woke up, and this is a cliche of a story. You've heard this before. Man, I woke up one day, hung over as usual, feeling terrible. And I looked in the mirror, and I think I finally had my heart right and my head right. And I remember it's like it was yesterday, man. I looked in the mirror, I looked like death. And I talked to myself out loud, and I said, man, what are you doing? You're just about to blow everything. You're about to lose your family, your wife, your job, everything. And for the first time, I think, like I said, I had my heart right, and I asked God to help me. And from that instant, I have not had one craving. I mean, I went from thinking about getting high 24/7. If I was awake, I was looking for a buzz. I was either buzzing or looking for a buzz. I mean, this was 7 days a week. If I year after year, and I went from that to never thinking about it ever. So I think that that was one of those glimpses into glory that reminded me, man. I'm telling you, I tell people on stage every show. I give my testimony about um, my my drug and alcohol and also my mental illness. I'm very bipolar, and I tell people about that every show. And I wind up with this song I wrote called "Wine into Water," which is a prayer to get sober. That's how I end my show. I want people to leave the place thinking about that, and I think that I tell everybody God is real, and God is as real to me as just sitting here. I mean, it's as I'm looking into a computer and it's real. It's sitting right in front of my face, and I'm telling you, God is real. God exists, and I also tell people. This world is totally upside down, it seems like, but don't let it shake you up too bad because God is still on the throne 24/7, pulling the strings, and everything is going to work out just like God wants it to work out. So I went from worrying to never worrying.
Right.
And I, so, yeah, man, every now and then I'll forget but I always get a nudge or maybe a slap up against the head with the way things really are. So, that Unbelief song, it's a great song, and this passage in the Bible, I think it's great because, yeah, man, we all struggle with that from time to time. But I just remember times in my life that God had shown me that He's real, and that helps me. And I think that's it. I think the message is you got to believe strongly enough, and that's when things start happening.
I think I think one of the things that's comforting about it is as a person again who believes, but like everyone or like most people at least, can struggle at times, with their belief is to realize, okay, I'm not alone, right? Like I think that's what's so great about what Scripture always does is it is telling you a story, right? This happened in this case. This happened. This man said this to Jesus, but it's also it's alive. It's speaking to you and me right now, and it's something that you find yourself in those moments and go, oh, okay, the Father had that problem. I've had that problem. T. Graham's had that problem. Like that's what's so comforting about it is to realize that you're not alone in these thoughts, and it's okay. It's okay. Jesus understands it, right? He understood that Father, and he still, in fact, is able to perform the miracle, because he wants to. It's his, by his grace. So that's one of the things I just loved about this, the idea of this song, and obviously, very grateful that you decided to sing on it. When for you, because I know for me, this is a new experience about music again that is driven by, it's worship music in a sense. What did you make you still, I know you still do all kinds of music, but was there a point for you that you made, were you always doing music that was worship in nature, or is that something that happened later in life? Like how did that come about for you?
I think it was a gradual thing, man. Maybe I matured and started thinking about um, things that quote unquote really matter.
Right.
My last few studio albums, I have written. I got a song on an album called "The Next Right Thing," and I'm just trying to do the next right thing. It's one of the AA things, trying to do the next right thing. And one of the lines that is always reminding me of the things I already know. And sometimes you have to be reminded of things that you already know. And like you were saying, man, all that Bible stuff, all the stories and all, they happen to real people just like us.
Right.
I mean, it could have happened today.
Right.
The same difference. It was just
Right.
centuries ago, but human nature hadn't changed. And Jesus faced the same temptations that we all face. The thing of it is, Jesus didn't succumb to any temptations. Jesus lived a perfect life, you know.
Right.
But it wasn't like he just had it made. He was tempted at every turn. You know, that he was out there, and the devil was saying, "Hey, make these stones into bread." You know, and bread, man, just said, "Man does not live by bread alone." You know, and Jesus went through all those trials and tribulations just like we do. It's the same. He was a man too. He was a God, you know, but he had the same temptations. The good thing is, you know, that God never puts anything on us that hasn't already happened to somebody else. And he's always going to show you a way out. So, yeah, you feel like you're alone a lot of times, but the truth is, you're not going through anything that hadn't already happened to most folks, you know. And God gives you the strength to resist temptation. You just got to do it. You know, you just got to say no to some things.
Right.
That's one of the hardest things to do in life is learn how to say no. And,
That's
but
right.
I think God gives you the strength to say no, and you just got to tap in. You know, you got to help your unbelief. You just got to believe. That's the whole thing. I think that's the whole thing. You got to be a believer. That's why they call us believers.
Right. Yeah, it's a great point too, that denying yourself, saying no, right, is a big part of probably something I think that I'd hate to say, but I think it's possible that we've lost a little bit of that, that focus. Sometimes I think that too much of the world creeps in, and it's like, you know, you got to think of yourself. And yeah, there's like this, all that I'm okay, you're okay stuff. And, but that's not really the message that Christ was telling us, deny yourself, pick up your cross. Like those are the, and believe at the same time. You were talking about your song, and obviously a big part of this for me for doing this album is that hopefully my two things. One, that you could, maybe people who've heard these stories, hundreds of times in their life, maybe through the songs get a slightly different look at it, right? So that maybe that's like, oh, I hadn't thought of it sort of in that way. Or maybe there's somebody who's never heard these stories, but likes the music and they're drawn to it. So it's a big part of it is to spread the gospel through the music. I know you've had those experiences where, like, for example, that song for you that's impacted other people. Can you share just a little bit about that? Like what that, maybe there's a certain time that you remember a specific story, but what that means to you for those songs to have that kind of impact and to influence, your audience and people that you meet. I'm just curious about your experience with that.
Well, man, I got to tell you, Wine into Water. I was talking to my co-writers. We don't even remember writing that song. Hmm. We all agreed. We didn't tell each other this till years later. But one of my co-writers, Ted Hewitt, said, T, I don't even remember writing Wine into Water. It's like I looked down and there it was. I said, man, you know what? That's what happened to me. I didn't know that happened to you. And then Bruce Burt said, that's what happened to me. So wow. This whole Wine into Water, getting sober song was meant to be. It's a God thing. And somebody here's what's crazy or wonderful. Pardon me. Somebody put it on YouTube, an old from 1998, and it's had the different versions of Wine into Water on YouTube. It's had like pushing 10 million views, and this is a song that never was a hit. That's been passed around by word of mouth from alcoholics and addicts, their families. It's just go on. I urge anybody go on YouTube and look up "Wine into Water," and the first one that pops up, start reading. There's like thousands of comments, and it's how I've had people. For instance, there was a woman said that her husband had beaten her up again, and she pulled out on the old road at night, pulled out a pistol, was going to shoot herself, turned on the radio, and bam, "Wine in the Water" came on right that second, and she changed her mind. This big football player in Tampa, Florida, at Florida State Fair. I was signing autographs, and after everybody left, he kind of snuck up to me and whispered in my ear, said, "Man, a friend of mine got me to try smoking crack a couple of years ago." He said, I was instantly hooked. I went through all my savings, my wife, my 3 daughters left me. I lost my job, lost my house. I pulled my pickup truck out into a field on New Year's Day, hooked up a hose, put it into the cab. I was going to kill myself. I turned on the radio, bam, "Wine in the Water" came on right that second, and I changed my mind. We were at the Grammys in LA, and somehow a letter got delivered to our room, and it was from an old couple that had a 40-year-old son fall down dead from a heart attack. They had made a suicide pact. They were getting ready to kill each other. They turned on the radio and bam, "Wine in the Water" came on right that second, and they changed their mind. I've had people that tell me it's helped them get clean. It was the reason they got sober. I've had families come up to me and said, "Boy, that song helped my daddy get sober." We sang that song at my brother's funeral. On and on and on. I'm telling you, hundreds and hundreds of people I hear every week at the shows when I'm signing autographs after a show. There never fails. There's somebody comes up to me and tells me "Wine in the Water's changed their life." So I know what a song like that can do. It's real, man, and God's working. And songs have a power. Sometimes you forget the power of a song, and it's just amazing. It's amazing what people can get out of these songs. We never know. Hey, we have no idea what's going on, that somebody could have heard one of these songs and we might not ever hear about it, but it's changed somebody's life. So I know the power of music. I'm reminded of it constantly. I mean, every week, and I know it's real. I know it's real, and it's a blessing. And these kind of albums have the ability to touch people and change lives, man. And it's not it's not because we wrote it or recorded it. It's totally a God thing, I tell people I'm just so happy to be the conduit. I mean, it's an honor to serve God. It's a privilege to serve God. And I tell them from the stage all the time, man, that it's real, and that's what I'm all. Sheila and I make our living singing. That's what I do. I go out and sing for people, and we're regular people. I cut my grass. We make our house payments just like everybody else. We live in a regular neighborhood. We're not rich, but God uses us. Sheila and I feel like our personal little ministry is to help people get sober and stay sober. Man, my whole deal is I'm just trying to save people some trouble. That's all. I'm just trying to save people some trouble because I've already been there. And one good thing about what I got going on as far as recovery is addicts and alcoholics, they don't want to hear it from their mama. They don't want to hear it from their brother or their sister, but they'll listen to somebody like me because they know I know what I'm talking about. They know that I've been there, and they know that I know what they're going through. So I'm in kind of a unique position that I got a bully pulpit, and I can tell people what's on my mind. And like I said, man, I'm just trying to save people some time and some heartache. And I think that's what God wants me to do, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, you're doing it great. And I got to tell you, we were talking a little bit before this started about how we both have a love for soul music. And for me, especially that spot where country and soul sort of meets. And it's sort of my favorite thing in the world. And to me, no one does it. Maybe someone does it as well as you, but nobody does it better than you. You're as good as anybody is at that. And so the fact that this song, musically, is sort of that thing, it's got sort of that blend thing. It could not have been any better that you would be on this. I mean, I couldn't have even dreamt it up. And when Mark and I wrote the song, we weren't thinking about Mark Hauser. We weren't thinking about, oh, who's going to sing on it, but when he said, he mentioned your name, I thought, oh my goodness, that's just the perfect thing. And I can tell you that in my family, I know my sister and her husband who lived down in Nashville, big fans of yours for a long time too. So for them, they're thrilled that you're on this album, but I'm more thrilled. And I can't thank you enough, T. Graham, for just lending me your talent and your voice and just being who you are. I really appreciate it. I'm just grateful that I'm grateful you're in the world, but certainly grateful that you're on this album too. And I thank you.
Hey man, the pleasure was all mine. And you're right, man. That's a soulful track. I love that track. And it was fun to sing to that track. And then you throw in the lyric. It's just all good. I thought it came together great. And I think somebody will get a blessing out of that, man. And this whole record's gonna be great. And I wish you very much success on it. And I'm so glad about Gloria doing some narration and all that. That ought to be.
Yeah.
I want to hear all that stuff when you get it all put together. I'm really looking forward to experiencing the whole thing.
It is on its way, so I will share that with you. But and I look forward to maybe we can do this in person at some point, hopefully sooner than later. And any chance I ever get a chance to sing with you, I'm going to take it. So I appreciate you again, and thanks for doing this. I really do appreciate it.
Yes, Lord, help me.